In this lecture, we will learn about default parameters. Let's continue building on the example we worked with in the last lecture. Our function takes in two parameters, a message and a number. What happens if we try to call it without any arguments? Let's try that. Leave the function definition the way it is, but change the function call to have no arguments passed in. Then we will run the code. Instead of a printout in the console, we see a type error. It tells us that our example function is missing two required positional arguments, message and number. So what do we do if we want a user to be able to call our function without passing in any arguments? The answer to our dilemma is default parameters. A default parameter is Python's way of allowing us to assign a default value for a parameter, so that if a value is not supplied in the function call, this default fallback value is used. The syntax for this is actually to add an equal sign after the parameter name, and then the value directly inside of the function header parentheses. For example, here is how we would assign a default value of hello world to the message parameter. Then we could assign a default value to the number parameter as well, perhaps a value of 3. Now we will run the code. Instead of an error message, we notice the default values we supplied printed to the console. One crucial point to note with default parameters is that we can never have a default parameter before a required parameter. A required parameter is one that has no default value specified and is named as such because when we call the function, we are required to pass in a value or we get an error. So we could not have message be a default parameter, but number be a required parameter. In this case, we see number underlined with a red squiggle. If we hover over it with our cursor to see the issue, we are told that a non-default parameter follows a default parameter. To fix this, we can either give number a default value, as we just saw in the prior example, or we can switch the order of the parameters so that the non-default parameter number comes first, and the default parameter message comes second. In the next lecture, we will learn about overloading.